Hang on, it's gonna be on in just 10 seconds.
I'm letting her do her thing first before I try to.
All right. Welcome everyone. It is 5:04. I'm going to fill in for Becky Flessis this evening, who cannot be here. So if we could start by having board members introduce themselves.
Jeff Henley. Sean Cook.
Megan Carlson. And then I'm Pat Hopkins, superintendent.
I'm Andrea Dish, I'm the business manager.
Dave Dostey, facilities director.
And we have Terry McGuire also in the room, technology director. Okay, so to get us started, we are here first thing to receive a report from Energy Management Consultants, EMC. As a reminder, the school board back last spring agreed to enter into an agreement with EMC to have them do an assessment of our buildings to determine whether there are potentially some savings that can be realized from updating some of our equipment, such as lighting, things like that. So we have Tom here, Tom, who is the president of EMC. And I'm sorry, I'm having a brain cramp. Adam, right, Adam. And Adam is here. So they're going to spend, I don't know, the next half hour or so producing, or 45 minutes, giving you a report of what they found and some recommendations. So I will turn it over to you, Tom.
Yeah. Let me see. Okay, so I'm gonna go through the report first, and so we're gonna do our very best to make this painless for you guys, but this is about, oh, there it is, Terry, it's not working again.
Windows P.
Windows P. Something's thinking. Duplicate.
There you go.
Here it is.
So this will be, what, at least 5 months worth of engineering with several engineers. Adam Hodgkins is a lead developer on the HVAC side of it. Adam has spent about 20 years in the field installing, servicing HVAC equipment, boilers, refrigeration, you name it, in a school he's installed it or serviced it. So because of the amount of infrastructure you guys have in the district, we felt it was necessary to have Adam as the lead on the HVAC side of it, and then other engineers that we had involved, whether it was a civil engineering solution for the high school water infiltration issue, or another mechanical engineer in our team looking at things that were a little bit more in depth, or the electrical side of it. So we had a pretty good sized team attacking this report, and of course, working with Gabe, your director of facilities, over the past 5 months. And it is nice to have a facilities director that has the experience Gabe does, because I've been doing projects in schools for about 21 years, and Gabe knows his schools about as good as any facilities director I've worked with in the state. And he's got more than most. So kudos to that. It makes our life a little easier when we need information. He knows what's been done in the past or what needs to be done. So thanks for that. Our report is all encompassing. It's definitely not just HVAC. We looked at literally everything from, again, water infiltration for the high school, especially the C wing, to paving, the sidewalks, ADA compliance, things in the bathroom. Adam has a couple copies printed out. You want to grab those out? Yes, we bound them up for you. This report's fairly long. It is definitely going to be a crucial, you can just keep those guys, for your capital planning. You'll find this report probably has more detail in it than most reports you've had done on your schools. Regardless of what the effort was, this thing has got literally everything in it. So that is written directly for you. There's no boilerplate information in that report. Anything that has a picture next to it, we wrote the current issue and then a solution next to the picture. So
Can you share a copy of this electronically with me so I can share it with the rest of the members of the?
yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yep. It'll be in a PDF, so it'll go. So this table of index, when you get the electronic report, you click on one of these things and it will bring you right to that section of the report, which makes it handy. So if you have an affinity for cooling towers, click on cooling tower and it'll bring you to that report, or just want to know about it. So, and they'll bring you to that section of the report where we discuss the cooling tower issues for the district. I'll scroll back up just because that's where we want to start. Again, this table of contents has everything in it from building automation, retro commissioning, door replacements, which are fairly abundant. VRF solutions like heat pumps, you name it, fire alarm, life safety, ADA compliance, right down to measuring every bathroom to making sure that the toilets align, are center line with things like handrails and everything that ADA compliant laws tell you that you need to have in terms of a compliant bathroom, right? 66 inches of turning radius for a wheelchair, things like that. But we also have a list of all of your equipment. So we took a complete inventory list of everything you have in the district and every school. And anything you see in pink indicates that it's already well beyond its useful life. Of course, the major culprits being the high school, middle school, Pittston, those are going to be the ones that you already know. That's rhetorical, that have probably the biggest list of things that are obsolete. You'll see a lot of pink in those schools, but in some cases, you've got equipment, and like in the high school, 59 years plus. I mean, that is literally almost 3 times the life of a typical unit ventilator or ventilation for a classroom. Again, not things that you're not aware of. And just rest assured, when we talk about things like this, there has been many efforts by your administration over the past to make improvements to those things without replacing them entirely. So if you open up one of those 60-year-old unit ventilators, you guys haven't made investments to try to control the heat a little better inside, but because they're expensive to replace, that's the long and short of it, right? But you have made efforts, just like the ventilation and the water filtration for the high school. So you can see this is telling you what you've got here. And this is the ASHRAE standard as just a reference point. When you're reading the report and you want to know how long a heat pump's supposed to last, this is the ASHRAE standard for life expectancy for everything you've got in the building. So that's what we use as our Bible for everything when it comes to this list. This is just going to be a quick reference point for you guys to look at and understand that at the top you'll see, or the bottom rather, high priority is 0 to 2 years, priority is 2 to 4 years, and recommended would be 4+ years, right? And now that is a result of many things. So that could be something as literally about to fail. There's no redundancy like a boiler, or there's high incentives from Efficiency Maine for certain things like heat pumps there is right now. Most of their money is geared towards electrification, still LED lighting. They're providing incentives for, but that won't be around much longer. They really want electrification for heat. So they're providing significant incentives for heat pumps in schools. We just did a project for Kittery schools and air conditioned the Mitchell Primary School, about 60,000 square feet, and they paid for almost half of it. So it's pretty lucrative. And now that entire school is air conditioned and heat with heat pumps. So it is fairly viable, which is why sometimes we call that red. You don't need a heat pump to operate school and open the doors, but it's a big chunk of money for it. So all these things are listed in here, and I'm not going to go through everything because we don't have time. This is 6 months of just constant work on this, and 45 minutes time. That's a lofty endeavor. But even message boards, sump pumps, pipe installation, bless you, and foundation drainage, of course. So each portion of this is just reinforced with pictures, and then its priority designation next to it. There's a lot of great information in this report. I definitely encourage you to read through it in further detail, because usually a follow-up to this meeting that we typically have is there's no action items that's expected. It's just to review the information. Then you have a follow-up meeting as to what should be addressed first, right? So that's all we're trying to do tonight. But there's no way we're going to get through all the details of every little picture that you see here that indicates why we're recommending this as a phase 1 project over some of the other measures. So you can see there, that's the chimney issue, combustion leak issues. If you read into this thing, you'll see why that's so important to address, not to mention that boiler is extremely old. Original You have, if you look over the right-hand side, once again, you have done some improvements. That's your lead boiler, the V-Spin CM2 on the right. But this is still your backup, which should be addressed at some point and, you know, in the near future. Again, extremely inefficient fire tube boiler. You don't see a lot of those still remaining. The middle school, 70s vintage, more cast iron sectional boilers. So wherever we have the red designation 2, you'll see we cracked open a section, took the jackets off, and Adam showcases their combustion air leaks or anything else you want to say about those pictures, Adam?
No, that was pretty much it with that one, the rust buildup.
Okay.
Signs of condensing going on from the jacket.
All right, so we open them up just to make sure that we're not just looking at the nameplate data and saying, oh, this just needs to be replaced. Really just trying to get into to every piece of equipment, looking at the ventilation equipment, the boilers and everything else, making sure we're not just saying, oh, it's all needs to be replaced. That's something you guys already know. I'm just gonna scroll through some of these things here. Do you want to get the PowerPoint up for me too, if you have that close by? What we basically did is we took things like these cooling towers and we put them into a PowerPoint for you guys because not everything in this report is recommended for a phase 1. There's still plenty of things that are they're fine. They have plenty of life left in them, right? So we extrapolated the things out of this report, like these cooling towers. Basically, they supply the cooling for the entire, well, wherever you have air conditioning in the school, both the high school and what was the second one?
Helen Thompson.
Helen Thompson. Both well beyond their useful life. Made repairs to these, the sump pumps in the past, right? Other aspects to it as well.
Yeah, spray motors, you know, those sort of items. Yeah, they're just
Patchwork here and there.
lots of patchwork, and that's, you can only put so much patch on top of patch.
Right. Well, that's where you're at with these cooling towers. They're definitely at the end of their useful life, so they should be slated for replacement because if it goes down, then of course all the air conditioning goes down along with it, right? So it's to try to get ahead of it. And you can see there's the one for the middle school. And things like this where we have a lot of ventilation issues or non-existent ventilation issues, mostly a lot of it at the high school. But there's other spots that we show. Each section is ventilation, right? And then boilers and then VRF and then standard sustainability. So you'll see the section and then whatever's attached to that section. So when you go to ventilation on the table of contents, it'll bring up things like this. This is the high school gym ventilation unit. That is, you know, pretty antiquated. You've got basically, you're just driving in outside air without preheating any air at all. So it's extremely costly. It's really inefficient. Again, with a gym unit today, you'd either have a package unit that had air conditioning and you can recover the heat in the space. So you're not spending so much to provide ventilation air into the gym. This is just literally hauling outside air and just driving it right into the gym and then having to heat it and temper it with your boilers. So it's a really inefficient, expensive way to provide ventilation. And it's extremely old. You know, somewhere between original of in the 60s to, you know, unless you've done anything to it since then. Gabe, I don't. And there's a lot of that throughout the whole high school. Even the T wing, which is your new wing. And this is the ventilation unit for the middle school. This thing is gigantic, once again, original from the 70s. Again, over twice its useful life. Not something that's failed, but obviously you can plan on it failing in the fairly near future or continue just to make repairs to it. But it's not recovering any air. Again, it's not an efficient way of providing any sort of fresh air and heat to your facility. Is there anything that you want me to mention? I'm just trying to go as fast as I can.
That was the big one on that one.
Yeah.
No energy recovery. On the date.
And Gabe, if there's anything you want me to say that you've done to those.
That's pretty much, you know, the key. There's no energy recovery in any of this stuff.
Right.
It's just you're forcing outside air, no recovering of any heat. We already have such a hard time heating this high school gym as it is. And that just makes it even worse in the wintertime.
And most of your refrigeration equipment throughout the district is R22, which is completely obsolete. It's 2 revisions behind now. So I think it's already beyond you can still get it in spaces, right? But it's extremely
Yeah,
expensive.
so you can still get it, the price is volatile, it shifts with the market constantly. Last time I saw, it was around $1,600 for a 25-pound bottle, and that was cost for contractors.
So that's obviously something you want to address because it's just, again, it's gonna be super costly. This is probably one of the biggest things that we find is a phase 1 project makes the most sense. These are your ventilation units for the high school. About as bad as it gets in terms of they're just from 1960. Adam's worked and installed many of these over the years, but every room that he walked into during the audit, and the analysis, every teacher would say, "Oh, you're here to fix my heat." They're intermittent, constantly causing issues for Gabe's team. But as you can see, this kind of speaks for itself. But it's not just the unit ventilators, it's everything around them too. So that's a newer one that's already about 20 years old. I think we had some more. Oops, I'll get to the yeah, get to the PowerPoint. So we isolated the woodworking around, primarily in the C wing, both floors. All the woodworking around the unit ventilators is just completely just kind of rotted out. You can every teacher was, talking about, look, I can put my finger right through this thing. And so all that woodworking is from 1960. So we have budgets that we got for replacing the unit ventilators with new unit ventilators. They're not going to be the same size, and we wouldn't profess that you'd reuse all that woodwork around it. We would want to explore a bid process of getting woodworking done in those classrooms. We know that obviously you would ideally like to get a new high school, right? And that would be the direction to go. But even if you do, in my experience of doing this with Auburn, it was, I think, almost 11 years, 12 years by the time they were in their school after they were number 1 on the list. You probably remember, Pat, better than I do, but there's just no way those are going to last that much longer regardless. So the most logical thing that we found during the analysis is to address those classrooms now in terms of ventilation and the fit up of the wood. And then just caulking and sealing that window wall that's basically metal. It's a very unique structure. Gabe could probably speak to its history there, but obviously it's not the most efficient structure. Sealing up all the cracks that are throughout that thing would be necessary. And that would be, I think it would go a long way with the staff too. So if you recall, we did a teacher survey, and most of the survey results that came back, and Pat had added in there things like, tell us about your classroom environment. What can we do to improve those? Not that you have a silver bullet, obviously, to make all the improvements, but help us understand a little bit in everyone's room. And you got 100 responses within, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. You got a lot. It was quick. So all those responses, but the majority of those were, there's no control of the heat in my classroom. It's hot, it's cold. Sometimes we open the windows, sometimes we close them, sometimes the heat works, sometimes it doesn't. So that obviously was a big impetus behind where we started our analysis. So a lot of those teachers' comments sparked our efforts of where do we start. For the districts of this size, even with a big team, we could spend days going through these without even addressing half of the things that they mentioned. So we try to take those comments seriously and then look at those spots. In addition to the things like in the classroom, obviously equally as important as food service. We've done a lot of walk-in food freezers and coolers with schools. Just finished one that was identical to this in Freeport, where they had an internal freezer like this, had leaked over the years behind the walls, started causing rot and all kinds of other issues. So instead of trying to rebuild it, we just totally demoed it and moved the freezer to the outside, and then just literally cut a hole in the wall, put a freezer on the outside, poured a pad. And now if it does leak, it's no longer internal to the space, because as you can see in the PowerPoint that Adam's trying to get up here, it actually leaked to the back side of the wall, and paint's starting to peel, and the floor is getting a little punky around the walk-in cooler. So that's something that should be addressed. The original, the boxes themselves, both from the 70s at the middle school and the 60s at the high school, I'm pretty sure you have replaced the condensing units. I don't think they would have ever lasted that long, but the actual structure itself is original. Alongside some of the equipment, as you can see here, just pretty tired. More condensing units that support those. That's the air conditioning unit that actually drives the cool air, walk-in cooler and freezer. More things like this, we didn't call this a priority just because it's gone quite a while, but you know, adding things like ventilation in the Pittston gym cafeteria, the high school cafeteria doesn't have any mechanical ventilation. The library has old ventilation, but really recommended to be more of an ERV, especially since it's adjacent to the C wing where all those moisture and smell issues are happening. We did do it, which we have in the PowerPoint. Do you have that?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it open right now.
Okay, so the report, Pat had us meet with the staff at the high school just to let them know that we did a full test of the, once we get it up and show you guys what we did. But we did a full test of the air during the worst times, and it's okay.
Can I just cut in? I mean, there are some newer board members that may not know the history. But the last time you did this analysis, it was determined that we have a water vapor issue under the high school. And so we have water coming down the hill in front of the school, and it's basically sitting underneath the school. And what's happening now is during certain seasons, you can smell that water just sitting there. It's a musty smell. And so it's in C wing, which is the older wing over by the English department, social studies department in the main office. And so there were concerns that smell indicated that the high school was full of mold. And so we wanted the test to find out if indeed we had mold growing in the school. And so what they learned is that it was not, the mold was not an issue. It really is the water that's sitting underneath, and it's creating this musty smell. So knowing that there were staff members concerned, yes, last week I asked them to go to a staff meeting and to present the information so that they could directly answer any questions that staff members might have, and to be able to give them the research and the report out of the work that they did. So that's just a little bit of a background.
As part of this analysis, the big thing your administration wanted us to focus on was a healthy learning environment, obviously, and that obviously the high school is probably one of the biggest issues if you made a list. This is the PowerPoint I was alluding to, where we isolated the things for each building that we thought, again, the boiler at the high school, cooling tower, the gym ventilation, the band ventilation, all the air handlers with R22 in it. And once again, the unit ventilators. This is a good photo of the woodwork that I was talking about. So you can see that plywood that's going around all those in the corners there. You can poke right through them pretty easily. In a lot of cases, they have contact paper on there. And again, some of this is too from plants, watering plants. The water leaks out of the plant and it causes some rot. But you know, they've definitely lived a pretty long life. Walk-in coolers. This is the picture of the wall I was talking about, where the water had leaked behind the cooler and starting to make things a little punky around it. Obviously,
That water's from condensation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the high school library at the top. Those are unit ventilators on the far side of it. And once again, those are original, really old. And what we'd want to go to is an ERV that would be pulling air from a different location. I think that would make that staff feel really good in that building, getting air from a different location from an ERV, not unit ventilators. Below is the cafeteria, and there is no mechanical ventilation down there. So I think that would kind of go a long way to provide ventilation in that space. This is just more information on some new technology that's out there. That's called the Dakin Rebel unit. I won't get into it too much, but only in the fact that it can provide both ventilation and air conditioning for almost the same cost. So they were made for school applications, municipal applications, where you have that situation exactly. So we've installed quite a few of them and had good luck with them. Access control, life safety is a big deal for all schools. When we do this analysis, you've got plenty of opportunities to improve upon here. I think this has been on Gabe's radar, your radar, for quite some time. So while you're looking at doors that are 40 years old that have holes all through them, right? You put new doors in, but at the same time address the access control because you might put an electric strike at the factory and not have to cut into a brand new door that you've just installed just because it's more weather efficient, right? So it would be to do those things at the same time. We're doing that for a lot of school systems where we spec out the door. When we get the competitive bids for install, we make sure they put in the electronic strike to accommodate the electronic readers. This is that window wall that leaks like crazy. You can see right through it on the bottom picture. You can see the daylight through it. And then Adam had an infrared camera out just to show the leakage. And this isn't really even in the coldest months, as you can see. This is what was the temperature up there? It was at 74. This is space inside, but
Yeah, I was at 83 that day.
you can still see it light up pretty good. Plenty of opportunity there. Roofing replacements at the high school. There's plenty of sections there. Those are pretty good sized sections. That's the T-wing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's isolated there in red. Technology wing, and that's the 96 wing. So these are the AD compliance issues that things aren't, that they just don't line up. There is revolving renovation funding money that comes out for these kind of applications. So we would not prioritize this as a red. This would be wait for some money. The state has been releasing money for things like ADA compliance and life safety. So this might not be a great phase one, but I would say this is a great phase two if we could try to capture some of that money. Asphalt, you've got plenty of opportunities there. Lots of potholes, a lot of sinkholes and things like that are just causing damage. This is, we brought in our civil engineering partner to help us figure out the best solution here for the high school. I'll make that a little bit bigger. Oh, good. So you can see that there's that red line that goes from the gray and red line that goes across the road. This is just a very preliminary plan that we put together. It would require a little bit of engineering, further engineering, which we didn't do until we knew what direction you guys want to go in, right? During these analysis, we come up with ideas and concepts. Once we find out what you really like, we'll then go to a real detailed set of engineering plans where we can actually get competitive bids, show you guys the bids, choose the contractors, and develop the project and scope. This would be a good plan in the sense of, I wish I had a pointer. Hold on that for me. Just gotta glad the van out this thing a little bit. So these barriers here would be to basically when the rainwater comes off the road, divert them away from the building. That would be the first step because this building is extremely low in relation to the road. Even when you're sitting right here, Gabe and I were sitting here while we were doing some of these dig tests, and we're literally in the middle of the window here of that classroom. So it's very low, the whole thing. So obviously it's not a shocker that you've got water infiltration that comes into the building. So this is basically water diversion. This would actually literally just be a speed bump that takes the water and sends it over here. But they've got a little bit of a retention pond here. You see some cat and nine tails coming out of it. This is a French drain, essentially, like you'd have at your house, but it's just a drain that doesn't exist. These are the sections that we did a lot of the testing in, which the next slide will show you that. But there are catch basins here and here or here. This one gets completely overloaded within what, an hour of heavy rain, Gabe, right? So the water starts to bubble up. And the reason is because everything goes to that one catch basin. These black lines show you where your underground drainage is. Currently, they're all kind of on this side, they're all coming back to this one catch basin. It simply can't keep up. So the other thought is to divert the water back to this side, away from that one catch basin, because this is where all the issues are in terms of the smell and the high moisture content that we found in both the concrete slab, because we did test pits in the actual slab of the school and outside. And I'll get into that in just a second, but essentially, the goal would be to install the drainage here and divert the water that's here back over and anything coming from the road away from the building in general. And again, all these black lines are where your current drainage is. You've looked at this in the past. You've tried to do things to remediate the smell. You've added heat pump in that space to try to get rid of the smell. Seemed to work for a little bit, but then it came back with heavy rain. It just didn't go away. And the reason it didn't go away is because the water just keeps coming in and it's under the ground. And while it's not unhealthy, it's not unhealthy mold, it still creates a smell and makes people a little nervous in the building. So we took it a step further. Every arrow you see there, we brought in a company and Adam accompanied them to drill holes into the concrete. The slab anticipated it being around 5.5 to 6 inches deep. We went halfway down, so obviously we didn't puncture the slab. Put in little sensors to find out the moisture content in the slab, because that's where the water's coming up, and it was about 90%. So it indicates obviously the groundwater is making its way into the concrete slab on heavy rains. It dries off, the smell goes away. On the left-hand side, we dug, was it 3 different spots?
Yes.
About 5 feet down, right against the foundation of the high school, primarily in that C wing, starting from where Diane sits in the office, all the way around to that end of the building that I just showed where the cat nine tails are. So we dig down to see if there's standing water, which there is. It's no surprise, and it hadn't rained in a while, so that indicates the water just kind of hangs out. So this is probably way further than you've gone in the past in terms of just all around testing. Just indicates what you kind of already knew, which is you're really gonna do some further drainage. And but digging down there to find out that you have none was probably new. I don't think that anyone figured that you had no drainage on that side of the building. So that would be one of the first things that we would do, of course.
These drains, are they tied into city sewer? Is this
No.
rainwater disposed of
These,
into the system?
yeah, none of the basins outside are tied into the city sewer.
Where do they go? Where do they,
It dumps into the swale around the backside where the tennis courts, around the back of the tennis courts.
is that just too small a diameter, a line that
Yeah,
leads away?
it's probably when it was first designed, it may have been fine.
Yeah.
But now with the storms that we have, and I think probably other basins have been added into the system that weren't there during, maybe when they reconstructed Tech Wing.
So you just, the capacity isn't
Yeah.
great enough to take care of what you
It's not, and there's no, with the test holes alongside the foundation, there's no French drain, there's no drainage around the foundation at all, there's no moisture barrier, vapor barrier that we found at all. So it was just, it's non-existent, it's not there.
So we I talked to Pat about this before, after we talked to the staff, and then, you make these recommendations. There's no guarantee that all the world's problems are gonna be solved, but it's a pretty good indication of what's going on. And with getting rid of this water, it's pretty obvious that that's the culprit, and that will eliminate the smell and the moisture that gets into the slab. The median spot between the C wing, that little connector, underneath of that is where, going towards the tennis courts, that's where the main drain is from that collection point. That's where it goes, that's where Gabe was just explaining.
You know what size that is? Were you able to size it?
I think it's 10-inch.
You got a picture right there of the line going out. So it's 8 to 10 probably.
Yeah, that's what they, yeah.
These are the test results. We were sure to test the air, both the air and we call it a tape sample. We brought in a third-party industrial hygienist to do this, send out to a lab. So this is not tested in the EMC's warehouse. All the things on the left-hand side would be different types of mold spores. Everyone knows that there's about 50 different types. Most of them are not harmful, albeit they do react. People do react to different mold spores differently. I could have no reaction to them at all, and the person sitting next to me could end up with a dry throat or issues, right? But it doesn't mean they're unhealthy in general. So we tested these things, and we took several different attempts because we're trying to do it after it rained, because that was when the worst of the smell. So we waited and had it scheduled, and it didn't rain, and then we waited, and then it finally rained, and we did all the testing. Point is that we did the testing when we figured that would have the most unfavorable results. So it wasn't like we tested these areas when it was super dry and we knew there was gonna be no smell and everything was gonna be kind of covered up with a kind of a false test. We did it at what would be considered the worst time. At the end of the day, the outside air was actually worse than the inside air, which indicates that the ventilation is actually working, there is ventilation, and it's not harmful to be in those spaces. And we presented that stuff to the entire high school staff. Had a pretty good turnout. This is more of the ventilation stuff at the middle school that we were talking about, that I showed in that report. These are all the things that I talked about that were, we extrapolated from that report to be something that we figured you'd want to consider as part of a phase one, but then you could just drill this down to whatever level you wanted to. Again, more AD compliant stuff, electrical upgrades. And we did it by school, once again, the cooling towers, the ventilation equipment, the walk-in cooler and freezer issues. Insulation, weatherization is a big deal in a lot of locations. Window replacements. Those are part of many projects that we end up doing. This is a boiler replacement. That's not your boiler room on the left-hand side. That's a boiler room that would fit. That's one that we had just recently done for another school, but that would fit in that same location for this particular school. And the issue right now with cast iron sections is that you can't get them. So if you lose a cast iron section, and that's what those little things are on the bottom right, each one of those sections has the water in it, heating the water up, and they either cracked from thermal shock or a casting flaw, most of the time thermal shock. Too cold of water coming back, cracked the section, and it starts to leak, and you have to shut the boiler down and replace the section. You literally peel it apart and put it in a new cast iron section. They're about 25 weeks out to get one if you can find one. So it's just it's risky. We dealt with this with mine at school last year, and they had to get a boiler in a box, and it cost them about $100,000 to get temporary heat for a couple months while they waited for a new section to come in. So if you didn't have backup and you lost one of these things, it's just a risky endeavor. That's primarily obviously inefficient, but that's not really the biggest issue. More weatherization issues. Most of these doors, you can kind of see right through them that we've indicated. Not all doors, but just those ones. And more heating plant improvement opportunities throughout Little Richard. Fire alarm, life safety things. Pittston had the same issue here. One boiler in this location that really is in a poor spot. More cast iron.
Yeah, so this is the boiler that's situated down in the sewer pit at Piston School, and after taking off the front panel, the whole inside of the cabinet is rusted right out. A condensing boiler of that size won't last very long in a situation like that, especially with the inside cabinet being that bad. That's where it draws all its air in. That stuff's gonna get sucked into the burner. It's gonna plug up, it's gonna foul, and eventually fail the heat exchanger. The electrical control cabinet underneath too has obviously gotten wet in the past, and that's an issue. The gas valves are very sensitive on those. A lot of electronics going on. Those have been damp or wet at one point in time. That boiler is pretty near the end of its life already, unfortunately. Just due to the nature of where it's situated. It looks like previously that pit has filled up and maybe gotten to the level of the boiler. And that could have caused some of the issues as well.
This once again is showing the gym with no mechanical ventilation, and that fan coil unit is just literally, that's original. And that's about as antiquated as it gets to provide hot air. So that fan below it is to kind of push the useful air down to the space. But that's just a coil sitting inside that big fan, and that's how you get the heat in that space. So the thought would be there was an ERV, recover, claim some of that heat in the space, provide ventilation in that room, would probably go a long way. But you could even do it where you add the Dakin Rebel where you could have air conditioning there too at the same time. So, and roofing here, this section of the building is obviously, as you can see, pretty rough. The soffit is pretty rotted out there, and the roof needs replacement and the door. And some weatherization to continue on. This electrical, speak to this one. So.
Yeah, so that's the main distribution panel. If you look at the top, there's no cover on the panel. There's some wires that are just wire netted together in the top there. Don't know the exact age of that panel, but you can see there's some carbon marks on the outside. as well, so some things have overheated inside that cabinet as well over time.
Mostly insulation and security here. I've stopped by the office a few times and just been able to get right into the front office. That door mechanism at the front doesn't really work. So it's a little concerning. Sometimes I'll walk right up and the ladies upstairs know me and they're like, how'd you get in? I'm like, oh, the door was open. So a lot of those, even if you have them, are not working. And that's the life safety thing for the folks that work in this building, that anyone in the general public could just walk right upstairs. But also the building envelope, there's pretty significant leaks throughout this facility. Building automation is something that we would want to address through all the schools, get into a non-proprietary platform. We do it with a lot of school systems where you go to an Niagara-based system, where it gets you away from being stuck with one particular company. You'd have the autonomy to go with whomever you want down the road, but you build Niagara, and every automation company in the state in New England has Niagara if you mandate it, and they can respond to problems that happen. So you're not stuck with anyone for service or a panel replacement, and you're talking millions of dollars in automation that you have throughout the district. You don't want to continue just putting in proprietary stuff. The goal would be, if you're replacing ventilation equipment during this process, to put in the open platform stuff so that you can start building a platform that doesn't lock you into anyone. You have complete autonomy to go with whomever you want for both replacement and service down the road. Just a lot of classroom lighting opportunities. This is one we just finished, and it just indicates the drastic difference in the classroom. But really why I use this one is because those are surface mount lights, but you have a ton of those on the right-hand side. They're just attached to the ceiling. Most of them are broken. The lenses are broken and just kind of hanging. Go with a recessed fixture on the left with dimming. It'll literally change the look of the room. And especially in the high school, that would go a long way if you did that in those rooms. This is what VRF looks like when it's all said and done. That's the air handler, the air conditioning, like that Kittery has throughout their entire school now at Mitchell. So that's that report. We again took everything from this report and put it into this is much longer, but I know that we don't have that kind of time, but you can see this goes into an immense amount of detail. It has all the stuff that I just showed there for the drainage information as well. We also have pricing for every single thing that we just showed. We have created cash flow analysis for you there's 159 measures. It's actually the most that we've actually done so far in terms of opportunities. So it's about $30 million in mechanical deficiencies. You know, obviously we know you're not doing the $30 million in mechanical deficiencies, but it helps you create that capital plan that we talked about 6 months ago. We created cash flows in situational things like phase one could include the C-wing ventilation with new ceilings and cabinetry. Option two would include that with LED lighting, and option three, and it shows you what that impact is on an annual basis. So what that payment would be, if you financed it, which almost every school project we do is financed through a lease purchase or a bond. You guys choose what you want to do, but we created the different options for a phase one that let you see, okay, if it's $5 million, it's going to cost us $60,000 a year to put towards this with energy savings. If we do this project, it's going to cost us $100,000. We've created all those examples. I just don't know if we have time tonight to go through that sheet because we've already spent quite a bit of time, I think.
Yeah, I know Jeff has to go, and I'd really like Jeff to be a part of that. Becky needs to be a part of that. I wonder if it makes sense, given the extensiveness of the report, that once you send us an electronic version, we'll send that out to finance, to give finance committee members the opportunity to read it, and then come back. I don't know if you're available next month. Come back, be able to ask questions, and then at that time, be able to really look at the spreadsheet.
Yeah. This is just so you know what you're gonna see next time I come up, no problem. This is every measure by school, by priority, has the cost, energy savings. So there's a lot here, right? And then we build in the option builder once we figure out what makes sense. We did one as an example. So this is what I meant by the option builder. It helps you just put them all next to each other to compare them without having to go back and forth with that cash flow tool. These are what it includes. This is the cost of the project, the rebates associated with it, the savings, and what your payment would be for 17 years at 4.1% for that project, right? Just as an example. So it allows you to go back into this thing and pick 5 more things for a different option, compare that to this one and say, all right, what does that cost us per year to do those things? And what would next year look like? You know what I mean? It builds it out for you, so it's truly a capital plan. So that would be its whole separate meeting. And on the right-hand side, we did put in drop downs to make it really easy, where we click on one thing and all the priority ones pop up in the red. Also a phase 1. So you can kind of you can make it really easy to kind of go through this once you know the ins and outs of the tool. And each one ties to a cash flow analysis. And that cash flow analysis is the years of the financing, your energy savings, and then what it looks like down below. So it's a pretty cool tool.
Is that something we'll have access to?
Yes, we'll provide you access.
Yeah, because that's too small for us to read.
No, I understand.
So-
No, I get it. Usually when we go through this tool, we do it in a smaller space or bring a screen up closer so you can actually see them. Because this is how you pick and choose your projects, really. It's the
Right.
easiest way to do it.
Well, we'll still be doing it in this room because this is where we can live stream for members of the public to observe. So I don't know if there's another way in which we can get the information closer to us, Terry, a different screen so that we can see it, or if you can share it.
I
So
can
that
also-
when you're manipulating it, we can see it on our laptops.
I can also
Oh,
zoom in like that, Pat, too, pretty
Okay.
easy.
all right.
And then it allows you to go back and forth from the option builder to the screen, zoom in on that option, so you can
Okay.
see what that option is.
Yeah, that's.
The option builder is something new that we just did because it became like you're going from this to the cash flow. All right, so that is $293 per year that we have to budget to do all those things. Go back and unclick that central office access control and see what that changes our price, you know?
Yeah.
So then we can immediately, right off the bat, we can make as many options as you want, but we have 5 built in here. And then you can literally print these out. Your team look at them and say, I don't think it's necessary for the roof at the high school right now. We could wait another couple of years on that. We should really be focusing on the ventilation. Take that out, right? It allows you to pick and choose what you feel is the most logical or the best money spent right now.
Excuse me, I have to leave.
Yeah.
Great presentation, but as you can tell, we're gonna need more information.
Yeah.
Great.
And I would like to make a motion right now to have the curriculum committee and the finance committee meet on the same day like we were doing.
Yeah, we're
I
going
hope you
to,
consider that this evening.
it's on this agenda
I see that.
to talk about that. And yeah, right now I have our next finance for December 10th, which would take it back. There was a request before to push it to the 3rd, but I think that the reason for that push changed. So 5 o'clock on the 2nd Tuesday. If that would work for you to be here at 5 o'clock on the 10th, if others support that particular date?
Good night,
Okay,
folks.
because that
Thank you.
conflicted for you. Thank you. That, it was fine, okay. All right. So, Tom?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm looking right now just to see it. There's a lot of school board meetings. You guys all every district seems to have the same dates when you do
Yeah,
school board meetings. Yeah, I can do it. Is that in the
the
evening? I guess?
10th at 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that work for the two of you?
I will check, but I'll make it work.
Okay.
I also have some information that I need to share with the finance committee as far as the background of our performance contracts and how it fits into state statute, what we're currently paying for our existing performance contract, and how that potentially could conflict should we get on the state's construction list and we still have remaining years to pay on these. I have an email from Greg M., who's our attorney, who talks about potential conflicts with doing a tax-exempt lease purchase and the issues we had last time when we tried to sell Hamlin. I don't know whether to go into it tonight or to wait until we have the full board. And I also wanted to mention, since we have people watching, that we've had several projects for, since the buildings were constructed back in 1960. We redid all of our primary boilers. We did over a $500,000 boiler upgrade back in 2013. And then in 2015, we had a huge performance contract that was over $7 million, which we are, again, are still currently paying for. Our payment and our budget is currently around $300,000. So we would need to talk about another potential payment. And again, what that would look like if we actually got on the state construction list and how it might affect selling the buildings or not being able to sell the buildings. And maybe that's a larger conversation when we have more members here, so that I don't repeat myself twice.
Yeah, I think that's really important, a conversation to have next month when more people are here. I don't think we should have it with just
I agree.
two committee
Yeah.
members.
That's a good point, Andrea. Would the bond be more, it's a bond, you're bonded to the payment, right? So if you have a bond to, say you did work at the high school, you're bonded to that payment regardless of what happens, right?
So according to Greg, there are two, so basically the state statute requires us to go out to bond for any projects. However, there's a carve out in statute for what's called performance contracting, which is basically what they're proposing to do. It's basically upgrades in exchange for savings. So there's statute and there's parameters that they need to operate under and show us where we're getting our savings, and that's where they're talking about all their measures. So that's the reason that we're not going out to bond. That's first and foremost. Typically, when we go out to borrow money, we do a tax-exempt lease purchase. And because it's there are IRS stipulations, there are provisions that we have to live under during the term of that loan. Some of these loans cannot be prepaid or bought out, which means you can't buy them off when we want to get rid of the building. So we would need to talk about that. And then there's other stipulations that we would not be able to sell the building to somebody who was not of tax exempt or governmental. So I'll talk about what Greg talks about. It's a much larger conversation. And and especially since we have put all of our buildings on the construction list, I just want to have this conversation so that everybody goes into this with their eyes wide open. So nobody is saying that we didn't share this information with you in the event that we are able to secure a new school. The other kind of lease of purchasing we can do is non-tax exempt. We have never done it. And the reason why we haven't done it is because the rates are so much higher than the traditional tax exempt lease purchases that we do. So that is the difference. And again, we'll wait till everybody's here to have that full conversation. It's just easier to make sure that everybody hears the same thing when we meet next in December.
And as the consultant, it does not matter to us if it's a tax exempt purchase or a bond. It doesn't matter to us whatsoever. We don't have to be married to the performance contract. We're kind of set up entirely different. Our job is to make sure we engineer it, get the competitive bids. We're going to show you the bids and then run the project. How you guys finance it is entirely your call. We're not pushing you to a tax exempt purchase. It doesn't matter to us at all.
Yep. For us, it would be the savings, the difference in savings, obviously, from the rates.
Yeah, but because you have done some significant projects in the past, the savings are not as abundant as you normally would have because you have done many projects. As I kind of said during the project, you've done improvements for sure. The majority of your savings would be coming from the classroom lighting and some fuel conversions, but most of your boiler rooms have been converted to natural gas. So your lead boiler is natural gas and very efficient. It's your backups for the most part that are the ones that are in rough shape. But yeah, Andrea's 100% right on all those things. I talk to Greg almost weekly, so I'm used to it. But it does not matter to us how you finance these things whatsoever.
I think we all agree that our buildings are old, some of our buildings are old and are in need of a lot of TLC, which is why we're asking to go on the construction list.
Yeah.
We've been getting a little bit of TLC, and that's why we're in this situation now, because we've just been taking care of them as best we can, and now.
I just didn't want the general public listening to think that we haven't done anything since
Right.
1960. And I'm not even going back to some of our older projects. I'm just talking about the two most recent projects that I have. So there have been others.
Plus the
So-
additional capital improvement stuff, we've
Yep.
replaced
Yep.
roofs.
Yeah, it's
Right,
just, I mean, our dollar is not going as far as it
Used to, yeah,
Everything costs so much more
yeah.
to do, and, keeping, yeah, we put some money in capital improvement, but it seems like it's always the same small amount that we used to get 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that gets us
That's
nothing
nothing.
compared to 10 years ago.
I think the bottom line for us is that we're finding it difficult to maintain 6
Yeah.
school buildings. It's expensive to do so.
Mhm.
They struggle.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
And when we did that presentation to the staff at the high school with the order issue, we let them know that this is not your first attempt at remediating these issues. And they acknowledged that. It was actually a fairly positive conversation. We brought in the industrial hygienist to hear it from the horse's mouth. It wasn't anybody trying to kind of gloss over anything. It was very kind of clear and honest and provided the data. The only thing they said was that they, being the industrial hygienist, that this was the day we tested this. So in order to, if you really wanted to get every single day, which was, that one test was $2,700, it would cost you an arm and a leg. It could change. At the end of the day, as Andrea and you guys had said, you do have ventilation because the outside air was worse than the inside air. It's just that it's those classrooms in the C wing especially bad.
Okay, Ben, we'll see you again on the 10th. At 5 o'clock.
Yep.
They will send us the electronic version. And I would request that all of us around the table take time to read that prior to coming here so that we can ask any questions they might have. And it will certainly better prepare us for that conversation
Yeah.
about priority list and how to proceed.
Yeah, that report is a lot of good information there.
It's a lot. This looks like nighttime reading or over Thanksgiving.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a lot. So thank you.
Child asleep, reading that report.
Thank you both.
Try writing it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so that we're gonna move into the purchase of the, what's it, Randolph? Modular. So Andrea.
So I want to remind the board members or the finance committee members who are here of a conversation that started, I want to say last spring. We discussed purchasing the modular at Pittston. So just to be clear to anybody watching, we currently have 3 modulars. We have a modular at the Helen Thompson School that we purchased with, we were fortunate to purchase with Easter monies. And then we have another modular at Pittston, which we also purchased with Easter monies. Those are the 2 newer. But we also have an older modular that we leased when we first closed TC Hamlet. And we continue to pay a monthly lease on it. We weren't sure at the time when we made this move what we were going to do. So because of the cost and because the state refunded us part of the lease cost through our ED 279 through our funding formula, it seemed to make sense to go with this formula, and they wouldn't have done the same had we purchased it. So it made sense during the time. So last spring we had a conversation about potentially purchasing the older modular at Pittston. And with everything going on with the change of staff, it kind of fell off my desk. And I'm here to let you know that it is back on my desk. And I wanted to share with you what that would look like if we looked to purchase that modular. So currently we're paying $5,000 a month for the lease. And another reason that we're looking at this now is because the last fiscal year was the last year that the state is going to reimburse us for those lease changes. So if we're going to do this now, it makes sense to do it now. The proposed purchase price of the lease modular is $286,350. And I received that from Skiabi. It's an older Skiabi model, but it is still in really good shape, thanks to Gabe and his staff. The lease proposal that I got from Gorham Leasing, it would be for a 5.25% interest rate. And the annual payments would be $63,275, which means in 5 years we would own this. So if that is something that we decide to move forward, again, like the copier lease, the board would need to approve the lease resolution for the purchase of, to enter into a lease agreement for the purchase of the modular, and then we could move forward.
And so the current annual cost is $60,000, so this would be an additional $3,275.
That is correct.
And it would be paid off versus
Leasing.
leasing forever.
No brainer.
Yeah.
Mhm. So what do
Are you-
we take a vote?
I can't take a
No, I
vote,
don't
we
think
don't
we
have
have
a
enough.
quorum.
And a new unit.
But
is a
if you
lot
are
more.
both in agreement, it can be a recommendation to the board, but it will have to be without a motion.
I mean, that makes sense to, move towards a purchase to just leasing. Is there, so I know the state's been reimbursing us for the leasing, but I know typically with leases, there's typically some sort of value that's purchased into that. Is there anything like that that we can possibly get rebated off the price of it, or?
As Gabe just said, your socks would fall off if you knew what the new price of a modular was. This is a,
That cost is about probably a third of the cost of a new one.
Or,
Oh, yeah, it's scary.
Everything.
and about how much more life is left in this modular?
It's a modular.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we've been maintaining it. I would say walking in there, you would not know the difference, really from the first year they walked in. It doesn't look any different. It looks the same. And as long as we keep up, the one thing, like all of them, it's the heating units on the outside, like everything that Tom went over. It has a rubberized roof like the rest of our schools. And the life expectancy of those, 15 years, they'll have to be redone. So yeah, it's like everything else. It'll need maintenance, moving forward.
the only downside that I could see is if we ended up getting a new school, and then we had, or new schools, and had 3 modulars that we needed to sell. Now, we had a modular by the high school that we had a hard time getting rid of, and I'm sure that was because of the condition it was in.
Yeah.
I would like to think it would be easier to get rid of or to sell a modular that was well-maintained like these are, so I'm not terribly concerned about it, but it's something that I thought I would mention.
Alright, so yeah, I'll probably make a recommendation to the board.
Okay, great, and you are as well. Okay, great.
And they're not going anywhere. I mean, we're gonna need
You
them
need them,
in
yeah.
5 years.
Yeah.
Right.
And as Tom said, and we've said it before, even if we receive approval to move forward with new construction, if we're at the top of the list, we're still talking at a minimum, absolute minimum is 6-7 years to 10, 11 years before you actually walk in a building, so.
Yeah, and
It
I
will take
mean,
a while.
if we own them and if there's some other sort of master plan that comes up, we have that building to be used if it had to be moved to another site.
Right.
We still have it as a usable building, classroom, whether it's Pittston, moved around somewhere else, we can always do that.
And at least we're paying to own something as opposed
Yeah,
to just using.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was different when the state we were getting money back in our funding formula, but that's since changed.
Okay, then Finance Committee meeting times, I think we just mutually agreed, we'll move it back to the second Tuesday, 5 o'clock. That seems to work for all of us, so done.
Is that back to when, is it back to committee or back to what it was originally? Back to when the curriculum is or back to when it was original?
It's back to the same day as curriculum, but instead of 5:30, it's at 5.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we moved it because Becky had a conflict as well.
Yeah,
And that conflict, that other meeting, they actually ended up moving the
Good.
date to the 3rd Tuesday, which created a new conflict,
that's
so.
what you meant by when you said resolved itself. Sorry, I
Yes,
wasn't
it
aware.
resolved itself.
Gotcha. Thank
All
you.
right, so the next one is resource officer insurance update. I need to let you know that the county, Kennebec County has required additional insurance coverage for the SRO position above and beyond what our coverage is. So they require $5 million coverage for general liability, automobile liability, and then there's also an abuse and molestation. We've been working on this for quite some time with our insurance carrier because this is unusual, right? I mean, what is our insurance? I think it's 3 million, right? So they require 5 million is not something that is customarily done. However, that is the expectation from the county. So we just received word last week from our insurance carrier that they will indeed provide us coverage for that additional amount, that additional $2 million up to 5 million. Now, I'm still waiting to hear back from the county to make sure that the coverage that they identified will meet their expectations as they asked, and I haven't heard back from them yet. But wanted to let you know that in order to get that additional coverage, it's a flat fee of $3,500. So it's $3,500 just to be able to cover, yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
So I wanted to kind of bring that to your attention. We were surprised by the amount. That's quite a bit of money. But if that's what they're requiring, that's what we're going to have to do if we want to continue our relationship with Kennebec County Sheriff's Office. So I don't know, thoughts or?
I'm just kind of surprised that they didn't mention that before. That's all. You know?
Yeah, when we began engaging in conversations, we had a draft MOU, and I did not recall seeing 5 million.
Right.
And so that came up kind of after the board decided that we were gonna move forward with it. Otherwise, I would have brought that to your attention. But it has been a sticking point. We have had to bring our attorney in to kind of help us work through this and figure out how to proceed. So this has definitely been a work in progress.
Over months.
Months, yeah, we've been working on this since,
Wow.
I think the first draft MOU was in June. So yes, we have been working on this for months, so. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's kind of where we stand. And then I'm told the weather's going to turn sometime soon, so we should probably talk about the snowplow bid. So I'll turn that to you guys.
So I will
Yeah.
So Pat and I have been like two trains in the night. I went to Arizona. As I came back, Pat was left for her
family
adventure
stuff,
and so we're just seeing each other for the first time in 2 weeks. During this time, we sent out snowplow bids. And 3 bids were sent out to various vendors in the community. We received 2 bids back, one from McGee Construction and one from Willett Family Construction in Chelsea. Joe, do you want to talk from this point, or do you want me to? or-
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, the two bids came in. We reviewed both of the bids. And we've been with McGee for many years. They've done our plowing, they've done our sanding, they've always turned in the low bid. They have, or been the only one that's turned in a bid for a long time. So we were surprised that somebody else came in underneath them. So McGee obviously is just down the street. My one concern is the other company is in Chelsea and a ways off. That's really just my concern. My concern is the time for response to the schools. If we need them here, how long is it gonna take? And using McGee over the years, they're just down the street. They've always had such a quick response. They've been there to do it. So that's my one concern. The difference for the yearly bid is oddly enough, $3,500. That's the difference between the two. So,
I'm doing that calculation right now, so it's per year.
right, per year.
So this is a 3-year bid.
Yep, 3-year bid.
So the first year is exactly 3,500, the second year is 3,630. And the third year is $4,110. So over the course of 3 years, the difference is $11,240. Yeah, sanding is $80 per year cheaper.
Per storm.
Per storm,
Per
per
storm.
storm.
Yep.
Yep.
$80 per storm cheaper with McGee. No, with the other company,
Yep.
Willett,
Yep.
yeah.
What do we know about Willett?
We haven't used them in the district for anything else. I'll be honest, I was doing some research trying to find other companies that would be able and willing to do the plowing in the area. And it was hard to find.
Yeah.
I talked to quite a few companies, a lot.
Wow.
And a lot of them were like, no, we're all
set.
set. We
Yeah.
don't, we don't even look at doing it.
What I will say is they do have the equipment.
Yep.
And they do service what were you saying?
Yeah, I believe they do a couple of the malls up in Augusta, if I remember
Okay.
right. I've seen
Okay.
their equipment at a couple of the malls in Augusta. Yep. So my one concern is the response being that far away. They're from the center of Gardner to where their office is out on Eastern Ave. It's I think it was 9 miles from their office. So that's my only concern. They are the low bid.
Have you talked to them? Have you spoken with them?
Have not, just me and Andrew. There again, we've all been really busy and crossing paths and we weren't gonna make a decision without you coming back and discussing it here.
We didn't connect till like 4 o'clock
Right.
this
And
afternoon.
Right.
honestly, we were going to kick it off until next finance committee, but I don't know, we don't know what the weather
When
is.
it's gonna snow.
Well, right,
Exactly.
and it's,
And we
this
don't
is,
wanna have
and that is
no
another
call.
concern also. We're late in the season.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, without even hesitation, McGee had already set their equipment on site if something was to happen. That's because they had the contract before. So he's like, I'm just gonna put the snow pusher there just in case something happens. Cause knowing that we hadn't finished this project, this process. So that was the piece. We're late in the season, and I know it hasn't snowed yet. So that's why we wanted to discuss it and bring it to the finance committee.
personally, I'll say I'm really torn.
I
I'm really
know.
torn.
I-
$11,000 is a lot of money over,
Yep.
over 3 years. It's a
Yep.
lot of money. But in addition to the fact that McGee is close by, and they've been so great to us. They're
Yeah.
local. They are in West Gardner. They have donated stuff to us. They have been good friends of MSAD.
Yeah, I mean, when I call for sanding, they're literally there within minutes.
Yeah.
Sanding, and sometimes that's the difference between, when we do an early, dismissal midday. Things need, cause that's usually when the snow's coming down and we need to get buses in to dismiss. And we go through and it's less than the 2 inches by far. We scrape the bus loops and we sand. And that's something they're in. They don't charge us any extra, even though they're doing it without there being 2 inches on the ground. Those are the pieces.
How much money did we budget?
I think I had 3% the last.
I don't remember the last. I mean, I just don't know how far off we are.
How far off this? We're right in.
Right in the ballpark.
So, again.
What do you guys think?
I mean,
I mean, you ultimately get to make the decision on this one, not us.
so I mean, I think.
No pressure on the two.
Nope.
Yeah, I think definitely like, maybe we should hear roll that out, kind of,
Yeah.
maybe give them a chance. And also too, maybe even like McGee know, like, hey, there's another company that kind of like is underbidding you right now. See if maybe they'll toss us a bone or something like that. Maybe not anything like necessarily insult them, but just letting them maybe know that it's just like, we're tight for money here. Like, I mean, we're like.
I think.
The only thing I think we have to be careful of is I don't think if we've put out a bid that we can then go back to one of the companies that made a bid and say, hey, you were undercut, can you do better? I don't know if legally we can do
The
that.
bid, however, does say that we are not required to take the low bidder, so
Right.
it's up to you.
Gotcha, okay.
Up to you guys. Remember I said, Sean, no difficult questions?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think we just push the recommendation to the board, just kind of let the general board know that, hey, this is a situation going on, let the full board decide. I mean, I know I'm kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit, but.
I really would like to hear more from
Yeah,
Lev.
and absolutely, I
right?
have no problem.
I would like to know, here's the situation,
Yeah.
this is what we're accustomed to, what can you commit to? Because if you're in Augusta, say,
Yeah.
plowing some of those parking lots and we need you immediately because school's gonna be let out, we have all of these needs, what's the response time?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
maybe
have-
maybe they have some magical fleet of snowplows that we don't know about. We don't know.
Well, they provided us a complete list
Oh, good.
of their equipment.
And I have sent them an email stating that we would need some time to make this decision and that we would be back in touch, so they know that we're discussing it.
Yeah, so they look like they definitely have the equipment needed to perform the job.
I don't disagree with Sean at all. I think that McGee has been so great to us and we don't know enough about these new people. And like, I think that there are people on the board who will want to have a conversation about like, is that $11,000 really worth? Like, I don't know if we have this great relationship with a local, obviously they're both local, but you know what I mean,
Yeah.
really local. I mean, but then some people are gonna say $11,000 is a lot of money. We don't have any wiggle room, so we can't play favorites.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. Okay, I think we have our direction.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what we'll
that's
do. All right, that's helpful. All right, so future agenda items, well, the next one is going to be EMC. So that kind of goes back to what you and I were discussing earlier, Andrea. So we'll have EMC in December. And then in January, that's when you come and do your capital improvement.
It's in January.
So Gabe will be here and review the capital improvement plan in anticipation for budget development. Then in February, Andrea will review the ED 279. I'm not sure whether it will be the current, the ED 279 for next year, or whether it will just be A 279 so that board members can understand the funding and how that works from the state.
They said they're starting to work on their calculation now. They have all of their information, so I'm
Maybe they'll have it in
hoping
time.
that we'll have it in time for the
That would be
February meeting.
great.
That would be awesome.
Okay. All right, that's all that I have.
Great.
So adjourn? All right, 6:25. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Yeah.
All right.